Hi, I am Vitold, and finally the two super strong personalities meet in the ring. So a BMW R1250GS and a Honda Africa Twin 1100 here in the DCT Adventure Sports ES version. So with dual clutch transmission, upgraded a version with additional equipment and a larger tank. And then the ES comes. So electronically adjustable suspension. This version appears to be the most commonly chosen, and I personally believe that there are good reasons for that. And I'm going through all the differences between the variants in my separate video about the Africa Twin version, so check it out later. The link is in the description. Here I'm going through separate categories in which one of the two bikes, so either a GS or an Africa Twin, will be a winner, and I'll be justifying why I think that in a certain category a given bike does better. In the end, I'll sum it all up and tell you which one out of the two I would buy myself and why. I've ridden all big adventure motorcycles that are currently available on the market, and I do not own a GS, just as I do not own an Africa Twin. Because of this, I stay out of any influence and have no bias, but just my own honest opinions based on my own experiences with these motorcycles. And I believe that this is important for you guys to know up front. Let's now go straight into the first category, which is engine and performance. Now, BMW is more powerful here with all the data working in its favor. Both bikes have two-cylinder engines, with Honda having them in an inline position and BMW using a boxer engine with cylinders sticking out to the sides of the bike. There's 1254 cubic centimeters of displacement in BMW's engine and 1084 cubic centimeters in Africa Twin's engine. There's also less power at 102 versus 136 horsepower in BMW. Same story with torque. BMW has more at 143 Nm of torque, while Africa Twin has just 105 Nm. And that's a big difference that makes BMW move much more quickly and also react instantly to throttle. Africa Twin with its DCT may have an edge when it comes to how quickly the gear changes happen mechanically, but the bike is just overwhelmed by BMW's performance, and there's no way it could win it over BMW. It also gets hot and may get uncomfortable frying your right leg once you stop moving on a hot day. Flexibility is not an issue for Africa Twin thanks to the transmission. It's basically doing the job for you after you set in the right mode, which should never be D. That is way too sloppy. I kept it in the end in one of the S modes, usually the middle one, and it worked the best this way, I think. So quick gear changes make the bike be always ready pretty much, but that's not enough, I believe, to balance the strength here, as BMW is a torque king, and along with good gearing, it rarely needs any gear changes to overtake other vehicles thanks to all that crazy torque. Exactly. It can pull a train with coal behind it and won't feel that much. Also, there are no heat issues when riding the GS, but it's generally a more shaky and vibrating experience than on a Honda, which would also be the only downside in this comparison for BMW's powertrain. In the end, it is a win for BMW here. The second thing to compare is handling. An Africa Twin 1100 is not a bike for city riding, I think, because it's not that precise when riding at low speeds. It's not exactly interested in keeping the line as you want it, and is fighting with you when you try to move perfectly straight or maneuver between the cars. BMW is, on the other hand, awesome here with its low center of gravity, unbelievable composure overall, with balance and precision of steering. At low speeds, it does what you ask it to do immediately. At higher speeds, Africa Twin does much better than at low speeds, as now you may benefit from it quickly and eagerly changing directions. It's surprising, especially in comparison to how it rides when rolling slowly, but it does really well and seems pretty happy on a twisty road with higher speeds. But so does BMW R1250GS, which stays just as neutral as it does at crawling speeds and quickly and easily changes directions, including when already leaning in a curve. Here it feels much superior to the Africa as well, again benefiting from its low center of gravity and super stable and precise front tele-level suspension that almost entirely prevents it from diving. This is great, and obviously that helps, and Honda again had no chance in this category, with BMW taking the win. The next category is suspension and how comfortable it can be. Both bikes can be, and in this case are, equipped with electronically adjustable suspensions. None of those is giving you as many possibilities of adjustment as some other motorcycles in the category today, but BMW offers significantly more comfort despite having a smaller range of movement. I mean, the wheel travel at 19 centimeters of front wheel travel versus Honda's 23 centimeters, and with 20 centimeters in the rear for the GS against 22 centimeters of the Africa. Also, ground clearance is massively larger for Africa Twin at 25 centimeters, while R1250GS only has 18.5 centimeters. But you may increase that if you go for R1250GS Adventure, the version which has 22 centimeters, then along with 21 centimeters of front wheel travel and 22 centimeters in the rear, so it's closer to Africa there. But I feel that for most riders it's still the regular GS versus Africa Twin. So BMW is overall more composed, it can be more comfortable, and it should give you much more confidence on the road suspension-wise. Africa is pretty harsh overall, regardless of a mode that you choose. Its front dives a lot, which is not inspiring much confidence, while BMW continues going perfectly flat, no matter what you throw at it, basically. When riding on paved roads, yeah, BMW is on a whole different level than Africa Twin 1100, and in my opinion, it easily wins here as well. It just rides effortlessly in comparison to Africa. Moving to the fourth point, which is seat and position comfort. Both bikes provide a comfortable knee angle thanks to having their foot pegs located in fine spots and low enough for my posture, being 183 centimeters tall or 6 feet tall. Both bikes give you the same seat height that starts at 85 centimeters in the lowest position, and after raising their seats being later at 87 centimeters. Both have nicely wide handlebars and all is fine here, along with the position on them, which is upright and generally fine for my taste. When it comes to the seats, BMW's seat could be a little bit softer overall, but it's shaped in a way that makes it wide enough and not get anywhere in the way in particular. The compliments about the width also apply to Africa, as the shape of its seat suited me. What is a deal breaker though for the stock seat in Africa is how hard it is. It's like comparing sitting on somebody's belly and then on somebody's head, if that's a good comparison. Belly being a GS and head being Africa. GS's seat is way more comfortable overall, and it deserves, I think, a win here. And well, so far it goes like no other comparison, but don't you worry, there are spots where Africa does kick ass. First, let's cover wind protection and windshields on both of these bikes, as they are okay. On the GS, I wish it was taller, as it's not as useful as I would like it to be. Africa has that super tall front fairing that helps in protecting you from the wind, so there's an advantage there. None of the two generates any turbulences, so it's pretty good in here in both of these bikes. Then comparing the adjustment mechanisms, BMW has a knob that takes a while to use between the extreme positions, while Honda uses a system that may take even an hour or two to adjust if you're, for example, on a highway. Now, this is because it requires both hands to use while adjusting. Then in the stock Africa, so non-Adventure Sports, there's no adjustability, and of course that doesn't help in that version. Considering those two factors so far, BMW is, in my opinion, a better choice since it gives us more possibilities of adjustment. Brakes. And I'm afraid that I've got to tell you that it is very hard to even come close to BMW R1250GS for any motorcycle because of BMW's brakes being both strong and easy to dose. Not all bikes are good enough here already, and there's one more point that makes it impossible, almost impossible for others to match, except for one bike, but that's not Africa Twin in this case. So when it comes to Honda, it's got a pretty weak front brake that needs a lot of right wrist workouts for you to be able to successfully squeeze the lever strong enough to get decent braking power. It's actually, in my opinion, below the category standard, and it's a disappointment to me. Forget about using one finger in this case. However, the rear brake is fine and useful, but overall it's not anywhere close what BMW offers here. And I could end this at that, but it's not the whole story about the GS. And I think that you should know that it's telelever front suspension that prevents it from diving, especially when braking naturally helps the bike to stay under control when braking as well. It also provides the rear tire with more grip, and so the rear wheel doesn't want to lift so much and it's got more braking power, more grip. The feeling of braking with almost no dive on the GS is very, very unique, and that's amazing. One will not understand how fun that is until they try, so I encourage you guys to go take a GS for a spin and just try to brake harder and harder no matter the speed. The rest of the experiences I'm leaving to you guys, but this is truly a huge thing. BMW wins all the way. Same with the drivetrain, as BMW comes with a drive shaft, while Africa Twin uses a chain that you need to take care of constantly. My own preferred solution is shaft drive, and even if some say that it eats up more power and torque, then let's keep in mind how much more power and torque the GS has over Africa, and I'm still sure that it's quicker in every possible situation on the road, so BMW has to take this one. We may stop at the category of fuel tank capacity. Adventure Sports version of Honda can carry 24.8 liters, while a regular GS does carry 20 liters of fuel. The thing is that if we get back to the regular Africa Twin, it holds less than a regular GS because 18.8 liters. Now, if fuel tank capacity is your priority, you can get the GS Adventure with 30-liter fuel tank, beating Honda by around 20%. If you don't appreciate the GSA's taller suspension, then you may get it lower and stay where you want it to be originally. So this makes it harder to choose a winner, but I think that since the difference between the top fuel capacity in Africa and GS is 5 liters in favor of BMW, then 4.8 liters of difference in favor of the same top fuel capacity Africa and a regular GS makes a GS stay still in brighter light, and it should take the win here too. Wait, now we've got Africa Twin in its base version that weighs less than an R1250GS. It comes with fuel at 229 kilograms, while GS is 20 kilograms heavier at 249 kilograms. But then the Africa Twin with DCT in Adventure Sports version and with the electronic suspension, so letters ES, weighs, wait for it, 250 kilograms. So 1 kilogram more than this GS. If I wanted to follow the same path as I followed in the previous point with fuel tank capacity, Africa should win, as it offers you the top solution and the lightest version, which GS cannot match on paper. And let's be clear here, fuel tank capacity should be combined with fuel consumption to show you a real benefit of bike's range. I cannot do it here, but if I were to guess, I would say that GS should be more fuel efficient anyway, and all might be even closer right there. But it depends on so many conditions that it's almost impossible to reliably compare the fuel consumption. With weight, there is something else, which is where that weight is located. And in BMW R1250GS, it is pretty low, with its low center of gravity. Now take a look at how low those cylinders are hanging there. That's a lot of weight, which in Africa Twin is located rather high overall, and this bike in the version tested by me, even though it was matching or weighing pretty much exactly the same as the GS, felt much heavier at all times. Again, a great comparison. Imagine trying to hold upright your short but fat sister, who is very much not sober and she cannot stand on her own. You grab her under her arms and just sort of lift her up. Now compare it with holding upright a very long stick of the same weight as your sister. So any little movement here to the sides makes you jump to that side and just try to push it with more and more force required for it not to fall. Now that stick is Africa Twin, and the fat, it was fat, short sister is a GS, which actually makes more sense than I actually initially thought. BMW's weight is just much easier to control, and not to mention that its weight pretty much disappears once you start riding. Honda may carry less weight, it may, not necessarily, but it may in some versions, but it simply feels heavier, and this is important to understand properly. And I've seen comments praising Africa's low weight, and thank you very much. As long as I'm 1 meter 83 centimeters tall and not 2 meters 83 centimeters tall and 500 kilograms, I would prefer to deal with the GS, which I'm convinced in this case is a winner even despite the data. Now the tech part and a chance for Africa to win. The DCT is an amazing development, and it really does work. It works awesome, and it does everything you want after setting it properly it does it properly with no surprises. It does impress, and Honda deserves a lot of credit for it. GS cannot have that. But then GS has the drive shaft, which is giving great comfort. Is it as impressive and fun? Not as impressive, but then if you want to have an Africa Twin with normal transmission, it not necessarily is that much fun anymore, while everyone will benefit still from shaft drive on a GS. Let's say that it balances itself out here then. Both bikes can have electronically adjustable suspensions, they can have cornering LED lights, but then it's Honda, which has a display that can be operated in some parts as a touchscreen. It would be an interesting addition if not for the fact that the whole display is useless for a lot of time, since after startup it loads so long that you need to switch the bike off again to refuel, since it will run out of whole 24.8 liters before that bloody display loads. Of course, I'm kidding here, but how long it takes is terrible. And then on top of that, it displays a warning message overlaying everything until you accept it with the button or click it on the screen. A big and frustrating issue, let me tell you that. BMW's system is cleaner and it's nicer to use, while it's feeling also more modern. BMW can also have both heated seats and keyless ignition and fuel cap, which Honda cannot have. So which one is the winner? I really like DCT, but would I want that in my bike? I'm not so sure. Also, knowing how it is operated, and I'm showing you more on that in my full review of the bike, which is linked in the description. Let's let you guys decide, I think, as I would likely pick the GS, especially thanks to the keyless system. So yeah, please let me know in the comments which seems, based on what I just said, more technologically advanced to you guys, and this is how we will judge it. And now the one we've been waiting for, so sound. Not much to say about the GS except for it either being tolerated or hated. I myself am in the group of those who hated sound, while actually Africa Twin 1100 sounds awesome, especially with DCT changing gears around highest RPM. It's very macho, it's a deep sound that converts it into a V8 race car sounding machine that people turn their heads after. I've had a lot of fun with that, and it's not even a V2 but an inline 2-cylinder engine, so a big wow and a also big win for Africa Twin here. Thankfully, as otherwise it might look ridiculous with Africa not coming back home with any win. But I assure you guys that this is what my real experiences are. They don't mean that no one can like Africa Twin or that it's a bad bike, but in comparison with R1250GS, this is what it looks like to me. There's also my comparison to KTM 1290 Super Adventure R, which does look differently in more spots. So let me also say that in terms of capabilities off the road, despite me not judging this, as I haven't taken the Africa off-road, I am willing to believe that a larger ground clearance and suspension travel can make Africa Twin 1100 more competent than a GS. I still myself would go with a GS if I had to, because of its low speed, precision and balance, but in the end of the day I would not take any bike in this category for any serious off-roading, as they are really too heavy and too expensive for that. Take a proper dirt bike or something from a mid-adventure category. Those bikes are slimmer and easier to play with out there. Also, it won't hurt your wallet so much if you drop them. Now, a category of design and off. Thankfully, this is entirely up to one's taste. I personally like the way that Africa Twin looks. It's got good proportions, it's got a cool face with those LED ring lights, and it looks majestic and proud overall. It's a big bike as well, but it's got equally big wheels, so it doesn't look too bulky. It is cool, I think. R1250GS can also be considered cool, as it looks like a piece of art built out of what one can find at a junkyard. I've never said that, but this seems like the right video to say it. So there you have it. In terms of being pretty, likely Honda is more pretty, probably, if we would ask a lot of people for their opinion. But which one looks cooler? I cannot tell, and I'm leaving this one to you guys. Please let me know which one you think looks better. I kind of lean towards Africa, by the way. And price and value for money. Base Africa Twin 1100 with no DCT, in a regular variant lacking that adjustable windshield, larger tank, cornering lights and some other equipment, along with that electronically adjustable suspension, is cheaper. You would have to pay 18% more for a base GS than for a base Africa Twin. Obviously, the lower the price, the better here in this category, but we are paying for different things here. Now, considering a GS that people actually buy, and this top of the line Africa, which also seems like the most common choice with the DCT, and Adventure Sports trim and that electronically adjustable suspension, we have a different result, with Africa now costing 36% more than its base version, and GS now in a reasonable, still highly spec'd version is now 8.5% more expensive than that highly equipped Africa twin. Assuming that you would like to have DCT, there is no choice basically and no discussion, and you've got to go for Africa, no questions asked. But for all of us that aren't actually requiring DCT to keep living, I believe that R1250GS presents actually more value and more value for money too. This will be very personal, but I consider GS a winner here. The last category to compare is what I call the X factor. DCT in Africa Twin dual clutch transmission can present such X factor, I think, and it really is cool and fun to try. I was very positively surprised myself. Now, would I want my bike to have it? Not necessarily, but what I would want and what I do appreciate in it is that already with the stock exhaust it sounds totally great and much better than GS. Both bikes carry great image and legendary model names, which also contribute to the X factor as well. Now the GS has that unbelievable riding characteristics around handling and braking that make you want to keep riding and basically never stop. Certainly not stop to spray the chain just as well. Now once you stop, you want to get back on it and just ride again, and this is super tempting and exciting to have a bike like that. This to me is what I hugely value in a motorcycle, and this would be a huge X factor for me, putting the GS as the winner in this category. In the end, BMW R1250GS wins in engine and performance category, in handling, in suspension, wind protection, brakes, drivetrain, fuel tanks, weight, price and value for money, and the X factor. Honda Africa Twin 1100 wins in the sound category, and we've got it up to you guys to decide which one should be considered as more tech advanced and also the better looking out of the two. The wins in almost all categories for the GS make my explanation of which bike I would choose myself much less necessary, but now yes, I would definitely choose the GS over Africa Twin for all the mentioned reasons. Sound is, however, actually very important to me, and I don't like the GS's engine clunky feel and that farting sound, but many say that you cannot go wrong with the GS, and I can understand that. If you would like to see my full review of the GS, the link to the video is in the description, but the results of this comparison do not mean that out of the whole category it's necessarily having to be the #1 pick. Other comparisons look very differently for both bikes, so go ahead and see you in one of these videos.